Hello everyone, Stormer One here. Today we'll be talking about a rain chance that's going to be coming in here for tomorrow and into Friday. There could also be the potential for some stronger storms Friday afternoon, and milder temperatures continue to be a theme next week. And the pattern looks to stay active later next week as well. So let's first get started with what's going on across the country on our watch warning advisory display. We have winter weather alerts and even some air quality issues in the northwest out there. Winter storm watches in blue, air quality alerts in the gray color. We even got more winter weather in the northeast and even some wind as well. Got some wind advisories up there. Those areas have been dealing with some snow squalls over the last couple of days. Meanwhile, locally here in Kentucky, we do have a flood watch that extends from parts of western Kentucky all the way back down towards northeastern Texas out there, and that's part of our next system that comes in here later tomorrow and into Friday. Here's a look at visible satellite across the country. You can see as the sun sets across the eastern part of the country. Here's our next storm here off to our southwest. Got a big upper level low that's spinning over the four corner states out there, and out ahead of that upper level low is a lot of moisture out there, a lot of clouds out there. Not only you're getting moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, but you also got moisture coming from the eastern Pacific as well. So this storm system is not going to be short-handed on moisture. Meanwhile, your polar jet stream is way up north. Your polar jet stream is basically way up here. So that winter cold is staying far away from Kentucky for a while. But speaking of winter weather, we still got snow on the ground in parts of Indiana and Ohio. Some of that snow has been on the ground for nearly 3 weeks, and that's a pretty impressive stretch of having snow on the ground. Now, at some point, all that's going to melt this week, and it should all melt either by tomorrow or even Friday when you get that rain that comes in here. But that's pretty impressive. Having snow on the ground for nearly 3 weeks is not something you hear that often here in the Ohio Valley. And for temperatures, this is temperatures right now. Temperatures are dropping like a rock in some of those valleys in northern Kentucky. It's already down to 37 in Lewis County. Harrison County is also already down to 37. And just a few minutes ago, these areas were just down to 40 degrees. So, yeah, those temperatures are dropping very quickly in those colder valleys. Meanwhile, areas that's not in those colder valleys is still in the 40s out there. Meanwhile, the rest of the state's either in the upper 40s to low 50s out there. But if you look at your high temperatures for today, it was pretty nice out there. Across parts of southern and western Kentucky was in the upper 50s to low 60s. You got that high of 61 in Marshall County in western Kentucky. Meanwhile, areas along the north of 64 was in the upper 40s to low 50s out there. So overall, it's not really a bad day out there. It's also been a little bit of a breezy day out there as well. Winds were generally 15 to 25 miles an hour. Of course, you got those mesonet stations in the higher elevations of far southeastern Kentucky. Pike County got close to 40 miles an hour, and in Harlan County got close to 35 for a peak wind gust today. And this was your low temperatures this morning, and the low temperatures this morning was not too bad. Upper 30s, low 40s, but in those colder valleys, got down to the 30s, and even a low of 23 down in Cumberland County. So it got very cold down there this morning. So let's take a look at some weather models here. This is the HRRR. And really by tomorrow morning, you're going to start to see some rain enter western Kentucky. And this rain here is generally moving from southwest to northeast. But you can see here how it expands over time. And eventually, the entire state's going to be getting some rain by Thursday evening. And within some of this rain here, it could be moderate to heavy at times with that rain. And you can see how that continues basically throughout, Thursday night and even to Friday morning, especially across central and eastern Kentucky. But by Friday morning, that dry spot's already moving into western Kentucky. And you can see how that rain quickly exits out of Kentucky by early Friday afternoon. and really most of the state should start to see some sun out there. And the temperatures will be warming up as well. If you look at temperatures in here, the model shows mid 50s, but we're going to have to up those temperatures a little bit more because where we have that southwesterly wind, models tend to underestimate the warmth for the temperature. So we're probably going to be likely around 60 by Friday afternoon, especially with that southwesterly wind. And when you talk about those winds out there, you could be talking about 20 to 30 miles an hour for wind gusts. Luckily, higher gusts will be possible out there as well. And there may very well be a period of some stronger gusts, maybe Friday morning, just behind that shield of rain out there. And if we check out a different model, this is the high-res NAM here. And you can see here, and it's pretty much the same thing here as the HRRR. I mean, most of the state everybody in the state does get some rain, with some heavier rain, a little more confined in central and western Kentucky out there, and eventually moves out by Friday afternoon. And if we talk about rainfall numbers, this is from a high-res NAM. You're talking about a general 1 to 2 inches, with some areas that may end up getting 2 to 3 inches of rain. I think the best opportunity for that would be in western Kentucky, though I cannot rule out some areas in central Kentucky maybe exceeding 2 inches of rain out there. Lower amounts across a little bit farther south and southeast, under an inch out there. And if you look at the HRRR, it's a little bit farther south of it, but you still get the general idea of, a general 1 to 2 inches, with some areas maybe getting 2 to 3 inches of rain out there as well. So, yeah, it's overall everybody's going to get a pretty decent amount of rain out of this. But areas I do see that may get over 2 inches of rain could see local high water issues. Snow's been melting over the last several days, which most of the snow is gone now, but the grounds are still decently saturated, so it won't take a whole lot of rain to get some localized flooding issues. Plus, this stuff here is going to be falling down under 24 hours, so a decent amount of this rain here will fall in a shorter amount of time out there. And then we move on to the strong storm potential for Friday afternoon. And if we go back to the HRRR, this is actually the end of the run, so it doesn't get quite throughout the rest of the day of Friday, but the high-res NAM does get through there, and you can see where it does try to show some showers, maybe even a few thunderstorms out there across parts of central and eastern Kentucky. But as you get, Friday evening, a lot of activity dies down as you lose that instability. So let's talk a little bit deeper about the strong storm potential. Why is there potential for strong storms Friday afternoon? Well, we got something that's known as a cold core setup. The temperature's way up there. So this is 500 millibars, and this is probably I believe it's around 20,000 feet, above our heads. You got temperatures are way down there. I mean, negative 23 degrees Celsius for a temperature. That's some serious cold temperatures, which means these storms here are going to be low top, which means they're not going to be very tall, but they can still be thunderstorms. They just won't be as tall as like a normal thunderstorm that you see during the summertime. But here's another reason why we can see some thunderstorms. There's actually going to be some instability out there. Temperatures will be warming to right around 60, but with those very cold temperatures above our heads, that can create a decent gradient for instability to kind of grow. And here you go, you got some instability values getting around 500 joules per kilogram, which is not bad for a cold core setup. If we were to check out the high-res NAM for instability, you can see here it's got numbers a little bit higher than that. Some areas may be getting up around 750, where sometimes the high-res NAM can be a little bit too bullish on instability, but the numbers are kind of close together. So you're talking about a general 400 to maybe 600 joules per kilogram of instability, which will be enough for storms to form. Now, one limiting factor with this is actually going to be the dew points. You can see the dew points are not all that impressive. You're talking about dew points in the upper 40s to, low 50s. Now, normally in cold core setups, you do see lower dew points, but it's very possible that the air might be a little bit too dry out there as for storms to form. So that's another thing to watch for out there is we got to keep track on the dew points. If the dew points do trend higher as we get closer, that can increase probabilities for some decent storms out there. If you were to check out the Hermon for dew points, you see basically the same thing, upper 40s to right around 50 for a dew point. So it is a limiting factor out there. Another thing we kind of look at during these cold core setups is 3 Cape. You can see here there's quite a bit of it out there. I mean, anywhere from about 100 to 200 joules per kilogram. That's more than enough for storms to form out there, with that 3 Cape out there. So it's not too shabby. And kind of going back to this here, I'm going to show you guys something that probably no one is not going to know what this is here, unless if you're a weather enthusiast, like I am. And that's a forecast sounding. This gives you a better idea of what we could be dealing with for later today on Friday. We're just kind of waiting for this sounding here to load in. And here you go. And I'm going to try to explain this the best that I can because I know a lot of you guys are not going to know what any of this stuff is. So right here in this red box that I'm highlighting is what we call a skew-T. So this is kind of like the X-ray of the atmosphere. So if you remember what we're talking about, 500 millibar temperatures. Well, 500 millibars is right about here. And we got very cold temperatures, way up in here. This is also going to be the limited height of how tall these thunderstorms are going to go. Now, these will be low-top storms. The normal height for storms like in the summertime is actually like way up here. So it's double the height than we would see for Friday afternoon. But one thing to notice here is that we will have a good amount of instability, and I'll highlight that. So we got a pretty decent amount of instability right into here. So this is where your CAPE is. Cable Available Potential Energy. And we got a pretty good amount of it in the upper parts of the atmosphere for the storms to feed on. But we also got a decent amount of dry air out there as well. Another thing we look at is if we look at our green line, which is your dew point line, which is right about here, and our red line is our temperature line. If your dew point line is farther away from the temperature line, that means the air is drier. We got some moistening in the atmosphere in the lower levels of the atmosphere, so that can actually help initiate some storms a little bit better. We also got some little bit dry air at the surface, which could favor some stronger wind gusts out there. But I think the main concern with some of these storms is that they can contain some hail out there. So that's going to be something to watch. So if we do see storms develop Friday afternoon, they could contain some strong wind gusts and some hail. So now not everybody will see it, but we probably will see some isolated strong thunderstorms. But we'll probably have a little bit better idea as we get closer for Friday. But for right now, there's a low chance for strong thunderstorms Friday afternoon. I think the best chance right now looks to be across central and eastern Kentucky. Then again, containing some stronger wind gusts and some hail out there. Oh yeah, one more thing here. Some people may be asking, is there a chance for tornadoes? And the simple answer is no. And here's the main reason why. If you look at your wind bars right here. So these are your wind bars. You can see here, they're kind of going at the same direction. So this is directional shear. That means there's little to no change with wind direction with height. So as you go far up in the atmosphere, the wind direction is basically the same thing. That's usually not favored for tornadoes. If you want to know what could be a favorable environment for tornadoes, if the winds of the surface are due south, around 850 millibars, winds are more southwest, and then you go up towards 700 or even 500 millibars, they could be due west. That's a favorable profile for tornadoes. Now, another thing we look at for wind shear is down in here. And you can see your wind shear values are not all that impressive out there, so that will limit the organization of these storms here. Usually the more wind shear you have, the more organized the storms can be. And you can see here wind shear values are not all that impressive out there, out there. And one more thing to look at is right over here. This is your hodograph out here. This kind of gives you the idea of the structure of your storm here. And you can kind of see this angle right here. That's where we may see the possibility for some supercell-like structure. So it's very possible we could see a couple rotating storms out there, but they won't be tornadic. But those supercells out there can still contain strong wind gusts and some small hail. So that's what we got to watch out for Friday afternoon. Eventually by Friday evening, the storms die down as we lose instability as the sun sets out there. So that's what we're looking out for Friday afternoon. If we check out the American model here, you can see here we may have some showers maybe left over from that system there Friday night and into early Saturday morning. And your Saturday is generally a chillier day here. If we check out temperatures here, for Saturday afternoon, you're talking about generally in the 40s out there. I cannot rule out some near 50-degree readings down towards the Tennessee state line, but most of the state will be in the 40s with maybe a couple areas maybe struggling to get out of the upper 30s out there. And going back here, this is for Sunday out here. And Sunday, it's not a bad day out there. We stay dry here. The winds turn more to the southwest, which means our temperatures will be warmer, and your highs during on Sunday would be in the 50s. And as you get into Monday, the temperatures are even warmer. You still got that southwesterly wind. We're still dry. Temperatures will generally be in the 50s to even some low 60s. And as we get into Tuesday, kind of a similar thing here. Southwesterly wind, temperatures are a tad bit warmer. You're talking about highs anywhere from the mid to upper 50s to even low 60s. And that's basically the same thing for Wednesday. But as we get into Wednesday, okay, this is where we may watch for our next system here. And you can see here, it's mostly rain for us. There is some wintry precipitation up north, and there has been some consistency up towards, Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, Ohio. There might be some icing mixed in up there. Right now, I think that stays north of Kentucky right now. I think here in Kentucky, I think it's going to be mostly a rain event for us. If we look at some other models like the Canadian models actually don't really show much of anything out there. If we were to look at the European model, it's also not as aggressive, but it does have that mixing line farther north. But the main takeaway is that the GFS has been pretty consistent with this. And usually when you have a model that's pretty consistent, it's something to kind of keep an eye on things. Now the GFS says we may see a little bit of wintry precipitation Thursday afternoon. I'm not sure about that. If we were to look at some other models like the European model, it still keeps us pretty warm out there, and even some could be a couple of storms out there that the European model shows Thursday morning. If you were to look at the Canadian model, it keeps us dry, but that storm system is much farther to the north, so the GFS might be an outlier right now. But anyway, going back to the GFS model here, the GFS keeps us cooler, but if you look at other models like the Canadian model, it keeps us a little bit milder. This is the European model. The European model actually shows a pretty strong storm system up towards the Great Lakes later next week here, and that storm system moves out of the way. And next weekend, at the moment, it looks to be on the cooler side or on the chillier side for us right now. That's the Euro. This is the Canadian model. The Canadian model's got the front basically stalled out over Kentucky. And here's the GFS here. And the GFS is already showing another storm system, but it's likely too fast here. The GFS likes things to be more progressive, and that's usually a bias that the GFS has. But this is getting around the 10-day period, so this time period can still change here as we get closer there. And overall, the first week of February is looking to be on the warmer side. Let's check out the GFS ensembles here. This is the 500 millibar high anomalies, and I want to look into the North American view because this gives you the full story. So as we go kind of throughout early February, you can see consistent ridging across a good chunk of the country. What we also see here is troughing across the northwest here, so they're going to continuously get storm systems out west. And we also got this huge trough up towards our north, and that's actually the polar vortex up the north, center over to Hudson Bay. It also covers Greenland. So with that type of look, you're going to get some ridging out in the east. But we also got this ridge of high pressure over Alaska, so that helps keep the western part of the country on the colder side of things. And you can see here, there is that chance there for that cool down next weekend. You can see here we trend cooler for next weekend out there. And then the GFS almost likes us to trend a little bit warmer as we get towards the second week of February. And right now, the second week of February kind of looks a little bit iffy right now. And rightfully so, because this is a pretty volatile pattern here. There's a lot of stuff that's going on out there. You got a lot of ridging up across Alaska, even across the northeastern Pacific. You got this, what looks like a positive NAO type of pattern going on over Greenland. And you can see how the cold air spills into the western U.S. with a ridge in the east. There's still plenty of time for changes on this here. But I'm not set in stone on anything just yet for the second week of February right now. If we were to look into the European ensembles, it's actually a little bit cooler. I believe it's a little bit cooler here. Yeah, you can see here as you get into the early part of the second week of February. You can actually see here it's a little bit cooler here based off of the 500 millibar heights. If you look at the temperature anomalies, you can see here it's actually kind of keeps us slightly below normal for temperatures, but you can really see where the core of the cold is. It's just generally across the northern tier of the U.S., with it being a little bit warmer across the south here. So it's kind of more of a zone of flow type of pattern here, which typically with a zone of flow pattern, you get less amplified systems, but we can still get a decent amount of rain out of this here. Regardless if we're going to be on the cold or warm side, it's going to be active. If we look at precipitation anomalies, this is the 7-day precipitation anomaly for at least parts of the first week of February into the second week. And you can see here Kentucky and Tennessee kind of in that bullseye for the above normal precipitation, which means we could still get a decent amount of rain, though some of that could be in a form of snow, and I'm saying it could be in a form of snow. I don't think we're necessarily done with snow just yet this winter. And if you look at the GFS ensembles, you can see the signal is actually stronger for us for above normal precipitation. So regardless if we're going to be on the warm or cold side, it's going to be active. So a lot of precip is likely to be on the way. And one more thing I want to talk about here is something we got to keep an eye on when we're talking about the cold air potential for the second week of February is actually something that's known as the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation. And you can see here, so today we are right here. So we're in phase 4, which phase 4 is a warmer phase. And I'm going to go and give you guys what the warm phases are and what the cold phases are. So we're kind of on the same page here. So phase 4, warm. That was a terrible W. So phase 4 is warm. Phase 5 is warm. Phase 6 is generally warm. But if you get into phases, 8, it's cold. Phase 1 is also cold, and phase 2 is also cold. And this is part of the reason why we've seen harsh cold temperatures throughout most of January. It's because we've been in the colder phases of the MJO. That's the main reason why. But you can see here we're actually on the warm side of things, and you can see how that continues at least towards the end of the forecast period, which takes you all the way to February 12th. But you can see here how it wants to trend towards phase 7 beyond the model run. And phase 7 is when you start the trend a little bit cooler, especially off to our north and west out there. But if we can make it to phase 8, that's when that cold air really starts to settle in. I like to call phase 7 kind of more of the transitional phase, because the country as a whole starts to trend colder in phase 7. That cold air that's displaced to the north and west of us slowly moves closer to us. We'll still be on the milder side, but we'll start to trend colder as you get into phase 7, and eventually get into phase 8. That's when the cold air starts to move in. And you can see here, if you want to kind of do the math on the timing, it kind of looks to be parts of the second week of February and perhaps even into the third week of February. So we're keeping a close eye on the MJO, because I do believe the MJO is going to have an impact on our pattern next month. And here's another model looking into the MJO, and here's the interesting part here. So this is the European ensemble mean. This is the extended run, and this takes you all the way to February 28th. So it takes you a lot further out. So once again, we are right here, and if you just follow this mean line here, it actually kind of takes us into the circle, which means within the circle, that's the null phase. That means the MJO is not going to have that much of an impact on our weather pattern. Something else out there will more than likely control our pattern. But the current trend right now is towards a stronger MJO, which means this line out here, I think reality might be more something like this. The model we were just looking at earlier was the GFS ensembles, which actually did a pretty good job on forecasting the MJO so far this year. The European extended has not done as good of a job, but you kind of get the idea of where it's going to go. You can see here we're kind of in phase 4. We stick into phase 4 for the rest of the month. And as you get into February, you get into phase 5 and eventually towards 6. But you can see how it tries to stall out in kind of phases 6 and 7. That's where the uncertainty comes into play. Because if the MJO stalls out in phases 6 or 7, that could mean that we could be warmer for a longer period, and that cold air arrival can be delayed. So that's another thing to watch for. And right now it's pretty far away, so there is time for changes. So I'm not going to get too deep on what I think is exactly is going to happen in the second week of February, but we're still watching the second week of February and perhaps into the third week of February, where winter can try to return here in Kentucky. But anyways, guys, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you really like my channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you guys got any questions, you can put a comment section down below. I answer you guys' questions. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.